Welcome to the Platinum Agent Podcast, where gold is just the beginning. I'm Renee Ruth, top producing agent, global real estate educator, and, believe it or not, a 2025 Grammy nominee. But today I'm here to help you hit the highest level in real estate. This is the Agent to Agent podcast designed to help you grow, scale, and reach platinum status in your business. Expect powerful strategies, expert insights, and real conversations about what it takes to dominate in real estate. And of course, I'm not doing this alone. My co-host Joshua is here too. He may not talk much, he is a dog after all, but he's got a nose for success and a talent for keeping me on track. So if you're ready to stop playing small and start thinking bigger, hit that subscribe button and let's go platinum together. Welcome to Platinum Agent Podcast. My name is Renee Ruth. I am your host. And today I am so excited to have with me Chad Swenson. Did I say that right?
You did.
Yes. Okay. He is a lifelong Coloradan, a seasoned real estate agent, 25 years in the industry, and he now works with Navigate Realty. He's a 14-time five-star professional award winner, mentors more than 20 agents, also was a community chair for the Boy Scouts of Colorado, past tense, and now is actually working towards becoming a local government official with the Broomfield City Council. Welcome in. I'm so excited to know you. One of the first things everybody wants to know, usually when they meet a real estate agent, because I don't know many people when you were in elementary school that what do you want to be when you grow up? A real estate agent. That's just not the thing that anyone ever said in school. So I'm always like, how did you get here? How did you get to this?
When I first got out of college, like a million years ago, I started in a wholesale company that sold plumbing supplies in their management mentor program, and quite honestly hated it. And so I had a buddy who got into mortgages, and he talked me into coming to mortgages. So I actually did mortgages for about 5.5 years and decided I wanted to get out of mortgages because I didn't want to work with realtors anymore. So I became a realtor.
You don't want
So
to work with realtors anymore, so you became one.
so then I went into real estate, and I've been a part of real estate ever since, was 25 years ago.
Wow. Yep. So that's the extreme experience you've had in it. Okay. So how does politics and this real estate, is it two separate passions? Like how?
I don't know if I necessarily have a passion for politics, but what happened was my wife and I have a hot tub in our backyard, and we sit out there. We call it the think tank because that's where we'll sit and talk about our family, our kids, what's going on with life, work, everything, the city. And I was complaining a lot about how our city was being run and what was going on. So she looked me right in the eyes and she goes, "What are you going to do about it?" It was a challenge in a way, and she was right. I can't complain if I'm not going to try and make a difference. I've got kids off to college, so they're not around as much. And so I said, you know what? Let's just do it. So I decided to jump in and see if I can make a difference here in our little community.
Yeah, we've got your website behind you. So anybody
Yeah, that's my campaign sign.
this campaign sign, check him out. So
Yeah.
how do you balance the two? I guess you just mentioned the empty nest situation, so I think that probably frees time up for you. So is that the balance?
Yeah, so last year my son just graduated college and he had played football in college. So we were traveling all the time to see him play. And then I have a stepdaughter, my wife's daughter, who plays soccer in college. So we're still traveling to see her. However, that's in Michigan. And then I have a daughter who's in Kansas at the University of Kansas, and she's playing club volleyball there. So we travel a little bit to see her. But those are so far away that we're not constantly on the road anymore. So I'm able to, I thought, heck, I've got some free time and maybe we can enjoy a little time together. Instead, I said, no, let me take every spare minute I got and go jump into politics.
And make a difference in your community. So talk about how you're turning relationships and or sorry, the role of the civic engagement in strengthening neighborhoods. So I know there's a connection with
Yeah,
real estate and your pursuit of this.
for sure. I don't know, how much you know about Colorado real estate, but it is very expensive to live here. I think last I read, we were like number 8 most expensive state in the nation, and we're the most expensive state not on water. It's not cheap to live here. So part of what our city has done is they've made it even more expensive to live in Broomfield, the city we live in, which Broomfield sits about halfway between Denver and Boulder.
Okay.
And they've made it so expensive that I look at this and I'm like, if my kids wanted to buy a house here, they couldn't do it, even with great jobs right out of college. So part of it is the way it tied into real estate for me is I'd like to remove some of the restrictions that our city has put on builders and developers so that they can build some more properties here. And if it costs them less, they'll be able to sell those homes for less. So that's part of the connection there. And then they're really restrictive on businesses in this city. And I want to remove some of the restrictions on businesses so that we can grow the economy. And growing the economy brings more jobs, which then in turn it gives people more opportunity to buy homes.
That's amazing. I think that's like actually a common theme in some of the areas that are not being developed is there's just so many restrictions. And I'm sure there's some altruism to that. There always is. It starts that way.
Yeah,
But it becomes something that hinders. Like I grew up north of Toronto, and one of the
yeah,
reasons I didn't buy there is because I couldn't. My
yeah,
generation, and we're talking back in the late 90s, you had to have parents funding 6 figures down just to get a house. Like it just it's pricing out and it should, I agree, we should make things accessible and affordable. So I think that's amazing that you're doing that for your community. Let's shift a little bit into real estate. I know
sure.
that you've mentioned that you have a really strong referral-based business. I guess that's because you were basically born, not born, but raised in Colorado. Is that where you get your referral network from? How did
Yeah.
that build for you?
So how it started was when I, like I said, got out of mortgages and went into real estate. I was in my late 20s when I did that. And at that time, that's when all your friends are starting to buy houses for the most part. So I have strong relationships with friends all the way from junior high and high school that I'm still friends with to this day that I really hit on my sphere of influence. And so I started getting homes for all my friends. And at that time, the mortgage industry, having a mortgage industry background was huge because I was able to help them if they needed down payment assistance or what was the best route to go to get them into a home, whether it was conventional FHA and some of them had VA opportunities, those kinds of things. But that's how it started. And then the mentor I had, I used to be the broker owner of a company called Metro Brokers Beals and Company that I took over from the guy who was my mentor, Ron Beals. And he always told me that if you do the right thing for your client all the time, it'll come back to you tenfold. So I've always done business that way. And in return, almost all my business is referral. I don't have to do a lot. Now it's a little different now because I'm getting older and my friends and stuff and family and past clients, a lot of them, I have sold them houses that are their forever homes. And but nice thing is I'm selling a lot of their kids' homes now.
There we go. There we go. So you said that if you treat your clients well, you'll always have repeat business. What are, if you could share with agents listening, some of the kind of success habits that you've used to maintain the client trust and loyalty that you've had over the years?
Sure. So I'll give you a story. So I sold a good friend of mine a house that was a great house. At inspection, everything was working pretty good, minus a few things we got fixed. Anyways, about within a month of him moving in, the garage door opener broke. He's like, hey, can you call the sellers and ask them, was there a warranty? Did they know anything was wrong with it? And quite honestly, I knew the sellers weren't going to do anything. And my client wasn't going to ask me to do anything about it because he felt like I did a good job for him. However, so I just called at that time, it was Sears because they had great garage door opener stuff. I called and had them go out to the house. I knew a day they were going to be home. They knocked on the door and they said, here, we're here to put in a new garage door opener. And I didn't order that. And they said, no, it's a gift from Chad Swenson. So I just had him put in the new garage door opener. And since then, I've done 6 transactions for them and sold both their kids' townhomes.
That speaks volumes. It costs a little bit of money, takes a little bit of time,
Yeah.
but it's what the returns are in the end. That is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Well, I was going to say another piece of advice I would give new agents is you will do something wrong and you will make a mistake. And when you do, fall on the sword. That has been something that I haven't made a ton of mistakes, thank goodness. I better knock on some wood. But when I have made mistakes, I own it and I make the correction to take care of it. And that has also earned me loyalty with my clients.
I always tell agents that I coach when they come in, I always say, listen, you pay for an education. Think about how much money you spend to go to university.
Yeah,
Our education is in the field in real time on the job. So the education you pay for are the mistakes that you make. We don't want to make them, but if
right,
you make them, you pay for them. I never used a personal property addendum when I first started. In the MLS, it said, here is the property that conveys fridge. It was always
right,
written in our MLS, and that was supposed to be the golden ticket, right? So when I bought this house in the MLS, it said washer and dryer. It was an MLS. I didn't know that you could go back and change MLS. Like it wasn't
yeah,
frozen. Like I didn't know that. So we get to close and there's no washer dryer. So I go back to the MLS and I hadn't printed the report out. I hadn't done any of that.
yeah,
It didn't say washer and dryer anymore. And I'm like, but it was the agent had changed it. And then so I called the agent. I said it was in there. So you know what she goes? She's guilty when she says, "Oh, okay, then you buy the washer, I'll buy the dryer. We'll call it even."
yeah,
And I was like, what do I do? I'm not going to go to my client and say, hey, like, I bought them a dryer. She bought them a washer. And there we were.
yeah,
And so, like, it's those kinds of lessons, though, that you learn in the field. And yes, did it hurt to take a chunk of my commission? Yeah. But I learned, oh, okay, there's a personal property addendum. Make sure you fill it out. Don't rely on anyone's word. Like I always say, if
yeah.
it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. That is the lesson I learned. If it is not in writing, it doesn't exist.
You're not wrong. I've always now speaking of that same kind of thing, I the day I write contract on a property, if I've got the buyer, is the day I either save to my hard drive or I print out the MLS sheet.
You are that, and no one told me that.
Yeah, they can't go back on you at that point because it was
No.
advertised.
So when people would print them reports, I'm like, why are they doing that? I did not know you could change it. I don't know why I didn't think and maybe also because I couldn't imagine why would someone do that. But chances are
Yeah,
her client got mad at her. We didn't want to sell this. So she goes, deletes it, thinking I'll just take the brunt. And then when I call her out, she's, we'll just split it and call it even. I'm like,
yeah,
I was an incredibly new agent and she was a very long time wealthy agent. So for her,
yeah.
that was
Well, and that hurts your pocketbook when you're new.
a
I
little
mean,
more.
every deal counts when you're new, and every dime you make is huge.
Yes. Yeah. And but again, to your point, this turns in my clients were happy and it maintained a long-term
Yeah.
relationship. How do you turn these long-term relationships for your business into success? Like what you meet somebody, how do you turn that into their friends, their family, their children? How does that?
Sure. Number one mistake I think most agents make is they don't ask for it. If you've done a good job, just ask for the referral. They want to give it to you. They're happy with everything. Ask for it. But the main thing I do is I try to be straightforward and honest all the time. So I tell people right away, like when I'm doing a listing presentation, look, here's what your house is worth. Here's what it's going to sell at, and here's why. And they may not like what I'm saying. And I get a lot of, no, the neighbors sold for this, so it's worth more. And then I have to explain why. And I tell them flat out, look, you can go talk to 4 agents that are going to tell you they can get you more money. And then they're just going to come back to you and ask you to drop the price or make concessions. And when in the end, if they would have just started where they were at, they could, where I said to be, they would sell the house and not have to pay mortgage payments for the next 30, 60, 90, 120 days because somebody promised them a pie in the sky that doesn't really exist. So if I give advice to young agents, it's be honest, be straightforward, but know why you're telling them what they are. Have facts to back it up.
What do you do with the client when you present these facts and they still, but I, what do you do?
I just talk to them and I tell them the truth. I'm like, look, here's where we're at. And you got to know not only what the comps are, you need to know where your specific market is going. Heck, here in Colorado, 5 months ago, we had 6,800 homes on the market in the Denver metro area. We're at almost 12,000 now. So it flipped from a seller's market to a buyer's market in 5 months. And if you don't know that, and if you don't know that we've seen prices drop at an average of about 1 to 3% a month over the last 3.5 months, then you're not going to be able to prep your people to price their home the correct way for the way the market is.
Now they got Chat GPT who will tell you all this stuff with a button.
I love I just started using those scatograms on Chat GPT.
What are those? Fill
You
me in.
got it'll plot all your sales in an area based on the criteria you've put on, and it'll actually tell you based on active sales and under contracts what you should probably price at to move your property.
On chat?
Yeah.
It's called, do you say to chat, I want to make a
Well,
scatogram?
what you do is so you have to export your MLS search, right?
Yeah.
And then you go into Chat GPT and you put in there, create a scatogram based on, then you export that, put your export into there, and then you determine the axis you want on there, which is square footage, price, whatever you want to do. And it'll plot all the stuff that you've put in there. And now you can see. Then you can even say, at what price point should this house be listed at to sell quickly or for a
In
quick
30
sale?
days, in 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah, and it'll give you now, it's not obviously if it was 100% accurate, we're not going to be needed for long. It's one of those things that you got to still check out, but I find it to be pretty accurate.
You still have to run these initial comps in the
You
area
have to run the initial comps.
and know
You
how to,
have to put the criteria into the MLS.
and then export that. And so it's
Yeah.
almost like a third party validation. Okay, guys,
Yeah.
here's two.
No, and what's good is if it comes out about what you're thinking, then you know you're on track, right? If it's way off, you better reevaluate what you're thinking.
Or learn how to adjust those comps better.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. And then when I use Chat GPT to pretty much write all my property descriptions now.
That's what I meant now too. So I always say this, it's not that they'll replace, that it's going to replace time. We don't have to spend that time creating
Yeah.
really great. It's just a time saver for agents. We're going to have time to do other things that require our immediate attention. Okay, so question, what are some strategies you use? Because I'm hearing that there's competitive markets in your area. All areas have them. But
Right.
when you're in a listing situation, especially if it's competitive, what proven strategies have you used to win the listing?
Sure. Look, the reality is that most of us market pretty similarly. We're going to have professional pictures. We may have drone footage done. We're going to put it on in the MLS and on all the different websites. It's like beating a drum. Everybody hears that. So, what can you do to set yourself apart? For me, I really push my experience because I tell people, I go, the best compliment you could ever give me is going to closing and saying, what did you do to earn your money? Because the reality is there's a problem with pretty much every real estate deal. And don't want my clients to feel that problem. So I talk about, look, I'm really going to earn my money once the contract's in. And here's how. And I tell them about how I'm going to handle the negotiations and the inspection, the title, the appraisals, all that stuff if I'm the listing agent. If I'm the buyer's agent, I'm going to be talking to them about how we can negotiate some concessions or how we can get things fixed in the home at inspection and what we really can appraise for if we're looking to mess with the price to get a concession. Those kinds of things. And that's just experience, right? If you're a young agent, just make sure you align yourself with somebody who does have that kind of experience because that'll just then your learning curve will be cut in half.
I tell every single agent that I bring in to my organization, I said, leverage my success. So when you go out to pitch yourself, you pitch yourself as a top producer in the area because you work with me. So
Yeah,
by extension, you have access to my head of knowledge, and therefore that is who you are. And I even say, I'll come with you if you need the
yeah,
support because that is the value add as an agent. And I tell everybody this, if you could write a book on how to do this job, it would exist. But you can't. I'm like 9 years in and I'm still learning,
Yeah.
mostly because the laws are constantly changing. The rules and regs, we just had a whole septic thing roll out that's brand new, right? So any agent now it leveled the playing field. All agents are like, okay, what's happening? It's like we're all new agents again in the
Yeah.
septic. So I don't know how I love meeting clients. They're like, I've sold 4 houses before. I'm like, when? I said, because
Yeah.
I sold 35 last year and I still learn stuff this year. And they're like, oh, I was like, yeah. I said, they're like selling a home. I said, that's great. You're not a baby, but there is just so much to what we do. I love to, how do you stand out during the client decision making process? Like, what do you do to stand out in that? I think you mentioned kind of your knowledge about appraisals, but what specifically could you share with a client that or an agent they could use with their client to stand out?
One, get to know the client a little bit, right? If you don't know them, if it's not a warm referral, be observant. When you walk into their house and all of a sudden you notice a bunch of fishing pictures on the wall, talk a little bit about fishing. Find a common ground because people want to do business with people they know and trust. If they don't know you, they better start to like you and then they're going to trust you. So,
I said this too. I was like, the first thing I'm doing when I meet somebody is trying to find common ground.
yeah,
First thing, because especially if you've lived any amount of life anywhere on this planet, there is something you could find in common with somebody, and that establishes the know, like, and trust quickly. And then I tell everybody, ask 1,000 questions. Like when
yeah,
my agents come back and say they met somebody, I'm like, yeah, how many kids they have? Oh, I don't know. I said, nope. I should not be able to come up with a question you don't know the answer to with these people. You might have to be
yeah.
able to go with them for an hour, but that's the point. Because after the hour, they hang up, they're like, that's my person. That's what you have to establish. So I love that. I know you sound like a solid mentor. Tell me how you approach if an agent was to come team up with you for mentorship. What is your approach to mentoring?
First of all, I tell them you got to have the right work ethic. A lot of people think real estate is, oh, I'm going to make my own schedule. You make a ton of money per transaction. This is going to be a cakewalk. And I'm telling you, if I could do this stuff over, I might not have gone into real estate. It's not easy. And so I want to make sure they have the right work ethic. And I tell them upfront and honest, if you're going to be successful at this, one, you better be personable with people. Two, you better learn the industry, know your contracts, know the market, know what is the latest fads, those kinds of things. And these days, you have to be big into social media too, because that's where so many of the younger buyers or sellers are at, is they want to have a presence on social media. And I'm a fossil, so I got into this company I'm at now because they've helped me with my social media and it makes a big difference. But I would say the big thing is have the work ethic. And I also tell newer agents if they want me to mentor them, be prepared that you may go months without making a paycheck. So you better be prepared for that and have a plan for that. Because if it's, I got to make 10 grand next month, you better know how you're going to do that and have a plan. And if you don't, you're going to be out of the business pretty quick.
And I've created a blueprint for my coaching business for that very reason, because the biggest question I get from agents that come in is, what do I do every day?
Yeah.
Like literally, you're used to going to work and someone tells you what to do and you do it, right? So now you're like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And you wake up and you're like, so what do I do?
Yeah.
So what do you coach them on in terms of income producing activity? Excuse my dog.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah. You've got to, like you just said, you've got to have a plan. And I tell people make a plan for every day and then your plan should encompass a daily plan, which you're going to have a few bullet points, right? Every day I'm going to make this many calls. Every day I'm going to check this box as far as I'm going to read an article. I'm going to look at the MLS. I'm going to find out something about a neighborhood, whatever it is. Then I tell people too, in addition to your everyday, make sure you're looking at a week out, 2 weeks out, a month out, 6 months out, a year out. Because if you don't have a plan for success, what's the old adage? If you don't have a plan, your only plan is a plan to fail.
It's failing to plan is planning to fail.
There you go. I knew you'd get it, right?
It was on the tip of my tongue too, and I was like, it's gonna come. I'm gonna
Yeah.
get it while he's talking.
Yeah.
Yes. So how do you instill both business growth and ethics? Because I think sometimes those two things can contradict each other.
And quite honestly, people are probably, when they aren't making any money, their ethics start to come into question. And so, what I tell them is if you were the buyer or seller and you had an agent who hasn't been closing much and they're working with you, how would you want to be treated? And would you want to be able to trust that person? And what would it take for you to trust that person? So I say, put yourself in your client's shoes and treat them the way you would want to be treated and do business with them the way you would want to have business done with you. And if you can't look at it from that perspective, get out of the business.
So I honestly, that's what I also say all the time. I'm like, people can smell desperation like dogs can
Yeah.
smell. So if you're desperate for that sale, you're going to push. So I'm like, you
Yep.
have to shelve. Here's your financial situation. You have to put it here. If you
Yep.
focus on helping people, the money will follow.
Yeah. All day long. My mentor told me pretty much the same thing you just said. He told me, don't do this business like you need the money ever. Because you're right. People will sense that and they know then that you're maybe not out for their best interest if that paycheck is the difference between you paying your car payment or your mortgage or your rent or whatever and not getting that check. And there's been plenty of times when I was young that if I didn't make that check, it was going to be a hardship. But I've been able to I there was times I didn't make that check and I had to figure out an alternative. And then that check came a month or 2 months later. And ultimately, the trust I had built, the relationship I had built turned into more deals years later.
That's the most important. I hope anyone listening, that's one of the most important pieces. Like I had to rob Peter to pay Paul sometimes when I
Yep.
because if a house wasn't going to appraise and they couldn't come out of pocket, there's no forcing someone to purchase something that's not in their best interest. So you get a payday. There were times to rob Peter to pay Paul because they shouldn't buy a home that's got foundation issues or has, you know what I'm saying? Like we don't talk them into things so we can see a payday. And that's
Well,
such a hard lesson, I think.
I tell my clients all the time. If I've got buyers, I'll tell them, look, I will tell you my professional opinion on every house you like. And if they say, Chad, we really like this house, I'll tell them, here's why you should get this house and here's what we should be at. But I will also tell them, here's why you should not buy this house and these are the reasons. And then I tell them also, now, if you tell me flat out, Chad, we still want this house, then I'm going to do everything I can to get you the best deal on that house. However, I want you to hear my professional experience on this and why this may not be in your best interest. You've got to be willing to help your clients walk away from a poor choice. And now after years of doing this, I also have the ability to walk away from clients I don't think are a good fit for me or I'm not a good fit for them.
That is such a key coaching. And there's was one client, I was coaching, and she kept working with clients that were driving her all over creation, wouldn't produce a prequal, but she was so desperate for the sale.
Yeah.
I said, you know that song, you got to know when to hold them and know when to hold 'em?" I was like, that's what this is like. I said, because getting them out of the idea that a client is not a payday. When you
Yeah.
separate the client from the payday, then it's easier to let them go because you're not attaching anything to a person. So I always say you don't depend on a person, house, or market for your success. Once you remove that, everybody's an opportunity and it's okay to let go.
And I also tell agents, put a value on your time. Because we don't get paid till the deal closes, there's still a value to your time. And if the example you used, if you're running around showing people and they won't even get a pre-qual, you're wasting your time and you're losing valuable money because you could be putting your efforts somewhere else. Now, I'm not saying those people might not ultimately be a client, but find a way. One of the other things I learned, I'm sidetracking a little here. One of the other things I learned as after years in this business is you can control your clients without them totally controlling you. The reality of real estate is most of the time we're going to work when they don't work, right? And that's just how it goes. However, I don't work Sundays anymore. I can't tell you the last time I worked on a Sunday. And quite honestly, I work very few Saturdays. And I tell my clients, here's where I'm at, here's what I've got going. And in this day and age, with the technology we have, you're sending them the houses ahead of time to say, hey, here's what's available in the area you like in your price range. What do you think? Then they're going to come back to you with, we like these four. And then you can look at them and say, let me tell you about these four. Now let's go look at three of these four. And you've just taken a client driving, making you drive around to go look at eight houses down to three that are really, truly going to fit their needs.
I that's you just hit something really powerful for agents. Our time now is money, right? That
Yeah.
becomes, and I think anybody on this planet would say it's the most priceless commodity we have. You can't put a price on time. So having
No.
said that, how do you manage your time? So how does an agent manage their time, life, family, and still be successful?
Have your priorities, right? And if work is your number one priority, you're probably missing the boat a little bit. You need to have family. You don't need to have a family, but if you have a family, you need to prioritize that. And I've never had a client say, I don't want to do business with you because I said, I can't show you a house at that time because I'm going to my kid's game. Or I can't take you out that night because I have a designated date night with my wife. And I've never had somebody complain about something like that. Now, if you've got something going on all the time and you're not meeting their needs, of course they're going to find someone else to work with. But people respect the fact that you also have a life. And if you have built the relationship with them, they're going to understand those things. But prioritize what's important in your life. Look, when you're young, you're chasing, you're hungry, you got to do every deal you can, right? I get that, and you should. However, it shouldn't be a client calling you at 5 o'clock going, take me to this house at 7 o'clock that night. I mean, no, I can't. I've got dinner cooking. I'm going to sit down with my wife, my kids, whatever your situation is, right? And they're going to understand that. But here's the other thing. I don't flat out tell my clients very often, just no. I tell them, I'll be like, oh, I am actually busy at that time. However, I have Monday at 4 and I have Thursday at 3, 2, 1, whatever time you have available. And you give them a choice during that time.
So that's something else. We have to set them up. People live in the houses. So my clients will be like, hey, could you take me in the next 2 hours? I'm like, hey, so here's how it works. I have to get clearance from the listing agent that like you walk them through that when they realize this is more than just a
Yeah,
show up, you can start to pace yourself. And I always tell you that's everything you said is exactly what I say. Pace yourself. So it's like you know what your freedom is, your availability. So say, hey, ask for that from the listing agent, those windows of time, and then go back to your client. This is the windows. When can you go? So it's this negotiation. But I really, man, I could talk to you forever. I want to ask one more question that you could leave the agents with.
sure.
But what do you want to pass on? You called yourself a fossil. I wouldn't put you there. But we're established, right?
Yes,
What
right.
would you want to pass on to the next generation of leaders in our industry?
What I would tell you is this, and you had hit on this earlier, this business is evolving and changing constantly. And in the 25 years, none of the changes have been so drastic that it takes away from what is important. And that is taking care of the client. If you take care of the client, the money will come, everything else will work. But if you do the business like you need the check, or if you do the business because I don't even know, you can fill in the blank on why you want to do it. But ultimately, do it for the client and it'll come back to you. Plus, you're going to have a passion for it. You're going to enjoy it. Look, I love the paycheck when I have a client who buys a $2 million home, but I enjoy the client who's buying their first time home for 300,000, right? And that is something that you see the excitement in the fact that they're making the biggest investment they've ever made in their life. They're going to build a home, whatever it is, right? And it's just so like what you do, have a passion for what you do. And if you're going to do it, make sure you're taking care of the client first.
I concur with everything you've said, sir. I have so enjoyed getting to know you. I will be following you on all your socials because now that I know
Thank
you're
you.
beefing up. For everyone else who wants to check him out, he's got his website, Chad for Broomfield. Guys, if you're in the
That's my campaign site.
campaign site, check him out. His real estate site and it's Swenson Real Estate, correct? For real
Correct.
estate. And then at Chad for Broomfield for his campaign, and then at Swenson Real Estate on Instagram, and
Yep.
then Chad V. Swenson. And so I'm gonna check out your socials and see how they're coming along.
Yeah, check them out. Instagram, I'm spending a lot of time doing videos for my campaign, but there's a bunch of videos posted there. I encourage anybody to check out both my real estate and my campaign stuff. Campaign will just give you a feel for who I am on those things, but the real estate stuff, there might be some tidbits that you can take as a new agent. And I don't keep anything secret. So if somebody sees something, they want to use it. I have no problem with that. And I'm open to an agent I've never met in my life calling me and saying, Chad, can you give me some advice on this? Absolutely, I'll find time.
You're amazing. I thank you for sharing that to all the agents listening. I hope you listen and re-listen. Huge nuggets in here. Thanks again for joining, Chad. We will
Thank you, Renee.
social soon. Cheers.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of Platinum Agent Podcast. If you're ready to take your business beyond gold and into platinum, let's connect. Reach out to me at this email, Renee at reneeruthofficial.com, and we'll make something happen. Don't forget, hit subscribe because Joshua and I will be back with more insights. Until then, go platinum.